Hi, my name is Becky Jennings, and this is the Response-Able Parenting Podcast. I give you the transformational tools to stop reacting to your children in the moment and start responding with intention. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Response-Able Parenting. My name is Becky Jennings. I am your host. Today, I am answering a question off of TikTok. It comes from a mom named Ali Marquez, and she is curious about how to encourage her child to practice more. So this, I feel we're going to be talking about soccer, but I feel like this will help in so many different areas because the intention behind their motivation is the same, whether you're motivating for soccer practice, whether you're motivating for homework or piano or whatever. I think the overall construct is the same. We're just going to be talking specifically about soccer and the ability to motivate. So this comes from Allie. So glad I found you. Maybe you can answer my question. How do I get my son to practice? He's 10 and he plays select soccer, but we can't get him to practice at home. We already took away the PlayStation because we thought that was the problem, but it wasn't. We get tired of telling him to do it all the time. We just want him to own it and do it on his own. So I asked for a little bit more context so I can understand what type of practice he has to do at home. So he has Dribble Up on his iPad, and that's what we tell him to practice with. Every time we tell him, he just puts his head down and goes into his room and starts doing something else. It's like he just ignores it. He has told us that it's not that he has told us that to him, sorry, I can't read. He has told us that to him, Dribble Up is not fun. There's not a lot of pressure around it, and we've stopped asking him to practice over and over again because apparently it's not working. We thought that maybe if we stopped asking, he would do it on his own, but he doesn't. On Dribble Up, all he has to do is these small drills. They're 6 minutes each, so they're not very long. He loves soccer. He just doesn't want to put the work in to be better. So I totally understand the intentions behind this mom. First of all, I want to just say straight out the gate that you sound like a really wonderful mom who just really wants your son to succeed, who wants to feel in control of their own choices and feel proud of the fact that they're making these choices to improve on a skill that will lead to hopeful success in the future. And I can also see that we can future project into much bigger things than just our son not wanting to play soccer. Maybe he won't be able to motivate in other areas. And we're kind of already starting to set the table for more conflict in the future over similar things, where we can pull this experience in as confirmation of a habit, saying, you see, this is very similar to how you did it in soccer and you didn't practice then. And then it can lead to kind of like a domino effect of beliefs about our child's behavior and maybe our child's identity and how they respond to things. I also want to let you know you're not alone, because it's very easy to want to get our children to do something because we see how it can positively impact their life. But for them, it's really not exciting, and it's not something that they want to do. But with our constant pressure to do so, it can be a really sticky and tricky situation. And you are not alone. I have been there. Hundreds of thousands of millions of parents around the globe also face this experience on a regular basis. So I want to take away any shame or any feelings of you're doing this wrong as I give some context and some answers. I hope to provide a perspective, maybe some questions to ask, maybe some thoughts to mull over and see if it feels a little bit better in your body. So as a parent coach, I work with parents. So I am not going to be giving advice for your son and your son's behavior. I don't do modifications for your children's behavior, but what I will give you is some skills and some language and some tools in order to connect more deeply with your son so that you have a greater understanding of maybe his development, his age, his abilities, and that can also add a little bit of softening and some awareness for you as well. So for me, when I was kind of going over this and taking some notes and looking at it, there seems to be like a default pattern happening, and that comes from how you and your husband were raised as well. So this belief that a behavior like not listening the first time deserves a consequence. So I saw that when you said that you both had taken away the PlayStation. So the behavior around not following through, the behavior around not listening the first time, not doing it on your own, that was meriting a consequence, and the consequence was taking away your PlayStation. Now, the two, just first and foremost, aren't linked. So it's not a natural consequence. So it might feel really challenging for your son. He might feel like, why is my PlayStation being taken away when I'm not playing Dribble Up on my iPad? So the two aren't correlated. And so it might start to build resentment and frustration and almost like a give up attitude. Like, well, if they're going to take this away anyways, I might as well not do it, because what does it matter? They're going to take away, my favorite thing no matter what. So I also want to say that we're seeing that the taking away the consequence isn't really making much of a difference, and it's not motivating him to do what you want. So I would remove the consequence and the punishment aspect of this tricky situation. When we punish and when we take away, when we threaten, that doesn't ultimately, in the long run, gain the results and the collaboration and cooperation that we want. We get our kids to do things in one of two ways: either the fear of the repercussion, or because they're connected and they want to. So it sounds like even now, the fear of the repercussions isn't a motivation anymore. So I would remove that entirely, because it's not aiding and assisting, and it's not going to build long-term connection and collaboration. I would even go so far as to talk to him about that choice and about why you're walking that back, letting him know that you understand now that that maybe wasn't the best choice, that your intentions were to help motivate him because you thought it was a distraction, but you're ultimately seeing that it wasn't a distraction, and we need to understand more about what it is about Dribble Up that doesn't feel good for him. And so you want to do that exploration versus force him to do something by taking away and withholding. I would also want to understand more about why I'm assuming that he doesn't care or doesn't want to or isn't motivated. So I would like to dive further into the assumptions that we're making about him, why he doesn't want to put in the work to do better. This is a assumption that we're making as parents, assuming that he doesn't want to put in the work. He might want to, but maybe something about it doesn't feel great in the process, and he needs to explore that, be able to speak about it, and there needs to be a system of support. I was thinking about this. Sometimes the getting started of something needs the actual support. Like the act itself, once you're in it, feels fun, feels exciting, is enjoyable. Like you're saying, when he's actually doing it, he has fun. But it's the startup that seems to be the tricky part. And I was thinking about this because for us, it seems silly. Like it's 6 minutes, do the 6-minute drill. That seems super simple. But even for us, I remember when I wanted to start meditating, I was like, okay, I'll start with a 5-minute meditation. But even just like sitting down, getting to a place, putting in the headphones, finding the 5-minute meditation and even pressing play, that was such a challenging part of the equation that took so much effort. And I actually needed to create systems around that. So the startup was taken care of. There's a book out there called Eat That Frog, and it's basically like do the worst task on your to-do list first, because no matter our best intentions of doing something, we will put off the things that we don't want to do to be last. And then hopefully, hopefully we do it, but usually it gets pushed off to the next day, to the next day, to the next week, to the next month before it actually happens. Another great book is The 5 Second Rule by Mel Robbins. And she talks about how there's actually a switch that flips in our brain when we count down just like a rocket, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and then act. Because there's something about the order of 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, but it shifts something in our brains that allows us to snap into action. But if we don't do that, and if we don't have these systems in place, then it will be trickier and trickier. So I would see if you can find some support in the startup and try to kind of hone in on the narrative or the assumptions of your child's behavior, your child's desires, and try to shift the narrative and look for different cues. Try to look for, instead of looking at the negative confirmation of this assumption of maybe he's lazy or he's not motivated or he doesn't want to get better or he refuses, let's shift it and see if we can find a positive to focus on versus focusing on this negative to confirm our narrated story about our son. The other thing I'd really like to get into is having an empowered conversation with your son. I find that we can often focus very much on the symptoms, right? The outward display. He's putting his head down. He's going into his room. He's ignoring us. He is not even doing it. And even when, you take something away, it doesn't matter. So I would try to figure out what this root of the issue is. And it sounds to me like there's an element of loneliness that I would try to navigate and try to see if this is the actual root. So you mentioned that he really does enjoy soccer when he's with other people. And when he's in a crowd of kids, he's really warm and engaged and having fun, and he really loves it. But when he's at home, and he's an only child, and he's at home and he's being asked to do this solo practice, and he puts his head down and he slumps and he goes in and his body language shifts. So I would try to figure out with a couple questions, and I'll share those questions in a second, about how to get to the root of what is actually going on, what's beneath the behavior. Because all of our behaviors, all of our outward projections are just ramifications of an unmet need. They are just a display of something going on deeper within us that isn't being tended to and isn't being met. And so I would ask him a couple questions, and I would start by empathetically narrating what you see. I see that these drills just aren't really going well for you. It doesn't seem like you enjoy them. And I'd be curious as to what it is about them that you don't like. I can see that when you go in to play dribble up, or when we ask you to, you start to look really sad. And I'm curious, what does it feel like in your body when we ask you to do that? I see that you really enjoy practice with other people. Is there something about doing dribble up at home by yourself that doesn't feel good? Is there a way that I could be supporting you better with soccer practice? What do you think would work? I think when we meet our children's resistance with our own resistance and our own adamant need for them to do and perform and to get them to do what we want them to do, get them to do something, it completely removes connection. And one of the best ways to foster collaboration, to foster listening, to have our children want to do what we ask is because we have stayed in connection with them. And oftentimes that can be as simple as just engaging in their world, being with them, supporting them in that startup, and supporting them through the process. So there could be a world in which he does dribble up every day. He does those 6-minute drills every day, but you're doing it with him. And then it becomes something where it's a moment to look forward to. It's a connected moment with his parents. It's a moment to see and to dive in and get curious about what lights him up about soccer, what excites him in his world. I think that connected time, that play time, no matter at what age, I think we forget about how important play is. As babies, we're doing the blocks and we're doing all the gadgets and toys that spin and make these noises with them, and we're on the floor with them doing tummy time. But as they get older and independent and their bodies get so much bigger, we can make the assumption that they don't need that connected play anymore. But that's actually when it's more critical and most critical, because they're working out all of their scenarios, their feelings, their emotions through play. And so if you can spend more time being curious about what it is that is stopping him from doing this and being more engaged in his world and more curious in his world, I have a feeling that the play and the practice will just come more naturally, because you guys are in connection and there's a desire to stay in that connection and stay in that collaboration. So I would do a number of things. One, I would work on the internal beliefs about my child, the internal assumptions about his behavior. And as opposed to looking at the behavior as the truth, I would look at the behavior as the symptom and what is underneath that I need to kind of start focusing in on and trying to figure out what that root is so that I can support that. Because it could just simply be lonely. He's lonely. He doesn't want to do it by himself. It could be that the startup is challenging and he just needs a little assistance in that part. Could be that he wants to do it outside and be outside with his friends versus doing it on an iPad in his room. So I would start to try to figure out what those little clues are that you can dig a little deeper and figure out how to support. And I would start by those really genuine questions that don't come with any assumption and don't come with any judgments, that you come with a compassionate, empathetic, neutral position saying, I've noticed this and I can tell that it feels bad. I can tell that it's not exciting to you. I'm curious as to why. I'm curious as to how I can support you, and start to ask some of those questions to gain more understanding of your son's desires. And then I truly believe that you will find a lot more success in this when we focus on pockets of connection, when we focus on really designating time where you're immersing yourself in his world to understand him more and give him the reins. Let him control that really connected time, that playtime with you, because then it's not constantly him listening to things he has to do. He gets to kind of take the reins and play with that control, because right now, the only way he has any control is just straight refusal. And that's not going well for either of you. It's frustrating you and it's making him feel bad. So I would see what areas you could give him full control over for 10, 15, 20 minutes during the day, where he gets to run the show and you get to be an observer and you get to be a participant in his passions and his experience. I think that will really aid in a lot of collaboration and connection between the two of you. And then it's really just sustaining this, staying curious, softening our assumptions, and staying in a play-like state for certain chunks of time during the day so he can really feel that connection, and that will encourage a lot of collaboration. I hope this was helpful. If you have further questions and you have a tricky situation that you're navigating with your child, please send me an email. You can send me a direct message either on TikTok or Instagram, and I would love to do a longer form answer for you. I hope this was helpful. I look forward to speaking to you. Until the next episode. Thank you for listening to the Response Able Parenting Podcast. If you like what you heard, please take a moment to rate, review, and subscribe. If you know someone who would benefit from this podcast, I'd be honored if you'd share this episode with them. Until next time, know that you are enough, you are capable, you've made it through all of your hardest days, and we will keep growing on this parenting journey together. This podcast was produced by Kim Kelty and myself, Becky Jennings, and edited by the Kelty Method, Branding and Podcasting.